Okay, we are live, but we got to let it breathe just for a moment. Hang tight, everybody, while we plug in and reach the entire MHH tribe over on Facebook. And we are good. So, welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, as always, my fellow football priest who you know, who you love, Zack Kelberman. Zack, I tweeted about this today, and after the time you spent on the Cowboys beat back in the day, we can't help but start having some kind of an emotional investment in the teams we cover. But you might disagree with what I'm about to say. But why is it so easy to take pleasure in the Dallas Cowboys choking in the playoffs?
Listen, there's no emotional investment on my end, no love lost. They do seem to be the team that does all every single postseason. I did not see the Green Bay Packers stomping coming at all. I didn't think the Cowboys would make it to the Super Bowl, but I thought they'd at least win one playoff game. But here's where it sets up something interesting, Chad, to take it a step further. There were rumblings that there's a mystery team for Bill Belichick's services, and it was supposedly in the NFC East. A lot of people figured it might be the Eagles with Nick Sirianni and the losing streak, but maybe Bill B and Big D. Could it happen?
What about the Giants, though? Because that's his old team, right?
I think they're keeping Dayball, though.
Are they?
Yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, this is from Ian Rappaport. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones declined to comment on the specifics of his looming decision on Mike McCarthy's job status. McCarthy has 1 year left on his contract. Jones did say this is as bad a loss as he can remember. Quote, floored, he said. So, yeah, it's on the table, Zach. And McCarthy, aside from that one whirlwind 2010 season with Aaron Rodgers, he is like the coach that epitomizes close but no cigar.
Yeah, and I think he's very much overrated. If you put Bill Belichick in that situation, an elite defense, an offense that has plenty of pieces, I think they can make some noise. They might even get past that elusive NFC Championship hump with Belichick at the controls, but obviously still a lot to be determined to get to that.
So, thus far, in the wild card round, in case you guys missed it, a very quick update, then we're getting to some Broncos. Trust. Packers curb stomp the Cowboys 48-32. Chiefs defeat the Dolphins 26-7. That was a bummer. Texans curb stomp Joe Flacco's Browns 45-14. As we speak, it's Rams Lions with the Lions up by 7.
Yeah, I mean, the Dolphins, Chiefs, we all were rooting against Kansas City, but I take a little pleasure because I'm so petty in seeing Vic Fangio, his team go down, Chad. So there's some semblance to that. In terms of the other games, I feel like they were pretty boring, if we're being honest. A lot of blowouts.
It was cool, though. I got to say, I had to eat my heart out a little bit because I was jealous of some of the quarterback play we've seen only in a couple of the games, but especially that Texans game, man. CJ Stroud is the truth. The Ronk in the house. So good to see you, big dog. Thank you. How are you? Appreciate you checking in and all the support, my friend. Okay, let's get to some Bronco talk here, Zach. I want to lead with this. I'm not sure if you saw the story, but in case you guys missed it, Pete Carroll is out in Seattle. Pardon me. And so he did his last Pete Carroll show on local. Every week he had a show with Seattle Sports, the ESPN station there in Seattle. And his last ever episode of the Pete Carroll show was this past week. And he started talking about, Zach, of course, with the looming uncertainty of the Russell Wilson situation and their history and just all that stuff. That became a key topic on the show. And I want to read a couple of things that he said here, and I want to get your thoughts, because it seems to me that even if he wasn't overtly criticizing Sean Payton, he was kind of implying some things. So here's one thing he said, quote, "As we got coming out of that phase, the early years where they went to 2 Super Bowls, 1-1, where we could really run it a lot, there was an emphasis on the passing game, and we did go too far. I wish we would have kept the blend more in the mixture, the run game, because I think we were more difficult to deal with that way than trying to out-yard them in the passing game." Then he goes on, Zach, to say, quote, "In the game," meaning the NFL, the football, "when your quarterback is a runner and he's mobile and he can escape, that's a factor in the game that really neutralizes a lot of stuff. And when you have that and you use it well, where it's a threat, but also it's a surprise, the threat is in the scheming of the running plays, and the surprise is when you scramble. That factor really is a big factor in the game if you can control it. Close quote. Last thing. Often, this is Carroll, often that type of a player, right, that he's describing, young Russ, for example, isn't really the most proficient type of passer. He's an athlete type of passer more so. And when you have that blend, which we had for a number of years, just look at Russ's rushing numbers when he was around 500 yards a year, close quote. So, first things first, do you think it was subtle shot at Sean Payton?
I could see how someone could read into it that way, but word for word, it sounded like it was a shot at Nathaniel Hackett, if anything, when he talked about a yards player, not necessarily turning him into a pocket passer like he wanted to be in the whole let Russ cook fiasco. But it also seemed to me like he was describing Russell Wilson of 25 years old and not Russell Wilson of 35 years old, because, yeah, no one disputes the fact that he was a great running quarterback, very athletic in the pocket. But in 2 seasons in Denver, it became obvious, Chad, that the physical limitations were there and Father Time was slowly creeping up. He wasn't the same quarterback, and that's what led, partly, if anything, to his benching.
So Phil jumping in. Pardon me. Good to see you, Phil. He says, good evening, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. So we'll shift topics for a moment. Will we pay Lloyd Cushenberry III? I think he will be too expensive. Hashtag Buckham, MHH for life, go Broncos. So, Zach, if this were a normal, semi-normal offseason where the Broncos had some breathing room on the salary cap, I would guess, I would say, yeah, they're going to make overtures to try and re-sign him. That's no guarantee, but they're going to try. In this case, I don't think it's in the cards, not only, Zach, because of the Broncos being, according to Over the Cap, $30 million above the cap right now, but in back-to-back years, they drafted developmental centers in Luke Wattenberg and Alex Forsyth. So what's your answer?
Even in a normal year, if the Broncos were under the salary cap, I don't know that Cushenberry would return. You can't tie up that much money into one positional group. And they gave $87 million to Mike McGlinchey, $50 million to Ben Powers, whatever it was. Cushenberry has had a good season, but you have to wonder how much of that was motivated by it being a contract year. Where was this Cushenberry for the last 3 years before 2023? So I have no doubt, based on the fact of the coaching and how the bigger the step forward the offensive line took, you give anyone, Alex Forsyth, a guy you draft, to Zach Strief and Sean Payton, and they will make lemonade. They will develop a starter. So it's going to be tough, but you have to let them walk.
Oh, that's the wrong one. Yes, I agree. But I just want to remind everybody of something, because this only goes to further hammer home the probability that Lloyd Cushenberry has played his last snap in Denver. And I'll try and blow this up a little bit if I can here. Bada bing, bada bang, bada boom. Okay, this is the top rated centers according to Pro Football Focus for the 2023 season. You'll find Lloyd Cushenberry, Zach, in the top 10. Ranked 10 with a 73.3 cumulative grade, 76.4 as a pass blocker, 72.4. So I think he's in line for a decent paycheck. And it's hard to see the Broncos being in a position to afford that. But before we continue on further, guys, I got to remind everybody, hey, it's a football playoff Sunday. It sucks that the Broncos aren't in it this week or this year. But to help console yourself and always just eat well, you got to make Little Caesars, which is the official pizza sponsor of the NFL, part of your game day, as big of a part as it is of the Jensen families. Order online during our Pizza pregame, 1 hour before, 3 hours after NFL kickoffs, plus all day Sunday, and get ready for some football and fun, everybody. You choose your favorite Little Caesars pizza. You pick the toppings you crave. Either way, you win.
And speaking of winning Broncos country, everyone scores with convenient delivery or our in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends and enjoy a few slices during the next game.
Yeah, so interesting. Now, look, on the subject of what Pete Carroll's talking about relative to Russell Wilson, it's people have to take account of the fact that Russ, part of the reason the Seahawks were willing to move on from him, and we remember the reporting, is they felt a lot of the magic in his legs had diminished. All right, father time, undefeated, the vagaries of age, all that stuff played a part. But he also specifically wanted to go somewhere where he could be given the carte blanche opportunity to let Russ cook and be that drop back passer, which, as Pete Carroll alluded there, that's not really his bag. He's not a proficient type passer. He's an athlete type passer. So that didn't work out well. Sean Payton comes in, Zach, and at times, especially early in the season, he went a little wild with some of the drop back. When we talk about run to pass ratio and all that, it was a little off kilter initially, but it seemed to me, Zach, that aspect of the Broncos offense did balance out about when they started climbing out of the 1-5 hole. But most of the runs we saw from Russ were either short yardage dives, right, or him scrambling, which was quite often. You didn't see much by way of a planned, with one or two exceptions I can think of, Sean Payton scheming creative ways to utilize that still alive, even though diminished, aspect of his game.
I feel like Sean Payton looked at the tape, and a telling comment he made after the benching was, we saw 15 weeks worth of whatever was on film that we didn't like, and it was like a cumulative result, and that went into the decision to put Jarrett Stidham in. I don't think he can trust, I'm speaking for Sean Payton right now, but I don't think he can trust Russell Wilson to scramble with how careless he was at times in the pocket with the fumbles and not really knowing which way a defender's coming and scrambling into pressure, running into the arms of a defender. I just think over the course of time, Sean Payton realized how limited Russell Wilson was, and his trust factor completely diminished.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of factors behind it. Russell Wilson, for what it's worth, averaged 469 rush yards per season in Seattle. Total rushing touchdowns were 23. His career high came in 2014. They went to the Super Bowl that year and lost to the Patriots. 849 yards and half a dozen touchdowns. But landing in Denver, Zach, at 33 years old, turning 34 halfway through the season, he rushed for 277 yards and 3 scores. That was in 15 starts, by the way. And then he also got 15 starts under Payton. That number did increase to 341 yards, also 3 scores, just for the sake of being thorough in our context. Leroy, what's up, dude? So good to see you on Facebook. He says, today's game with the Cowboys-Packers, I'm so glad we didn't hire Dan Quinn as head coach. His defense was exposed once again today. Yeah, they seem to be I don't even know if it was so much schematic shortcomings, Zach, although I'm sure that played a role, but it just seemed like an energy deficiency. Like the Packers came to play and brought that playoff intensity and don't want our season to end kind of panic almost in their play. They stayed poised, obviously, but the Cowboys, to me, it was more of an energetic thing. I mean, the vibe was off between Dak and CeeDee Lamb. It was just a weird day, vibe, energy, focus, preparation-wise, and that unfortunately does reflect on the coaches, including Dan Quinn.
Yeah, I can't speak too intimately to the Cowboys to know whether they didn't show up or the inner workings of the team. But one thing about Russell Wilson and running, what the Cowboys do when you have a quarterback that has some athleticism, if you want rushing plays to work, you have to have the other components that can hold a defense or scare a defense. The Eagles, even the Saints, the Cowboys, they all have secondary parts and a supporting cast, Chad, that can take attention away from the quarterback. Who can the Broncos really rely on? They didn't have a tight end to speak of. You had only Cortland Sutton at receiver for the most part that was scaring defenses. The running game wasn't really scaring anyone. The offensive line had its up and downs. So in order for you to have a successful rushing attack with the quarterback, you have to have more around the quarterback, in my opinion.
That's what makes this offseason particularly challenging for the Broncos is, you have a desperate need at the key position, quarterback, but you also have multiple holes on offense. And Eric Trickle had an article today, Zach, 10 offensive options for the Broncos in round 1. There's a couple of guys on that list that could end up being there also in round 2 if you don't land that quarterback, or if the Broncos opt to bring Russ back, or if they opt to do something different at quarterback. So it's interesting because you read that and you see some of these names and you think, yeah, what a difference any one of these guys could make on the roster. But it's like, first things first, you got to solve quarterback. Anthony, bro, on Facebook, so good to see you. Appreciate you. He says, "What's up, Chad and Zach? Love your guys' coverage of our Broncos. Keep up the great work. We shall, my friend. As long as you and everybody else keep showing up, we're going to keep showing up. So thank you, big dog." But Zach, I got to ask you, Cortland Sutton, his little Instagram post where he kind of made it sound like a lot of people interpret it as a goodbye of sorts. Did you see that, and did you interpret it as that? What was your thoughts on the Sutton IG post?
I haven't seen it, so it's tough for me to comment on. Can we pull it up?
Yeah, I'll pull it up real quick because it's been a hot topic around, of course, Broncos country over the last 2 or 3 days. And I'll pull this up, do the share screen. We can do the scratch and sniff. Everybody sees what's going on here. Hang tight 1 second. But here is let me blow it up a little bit so everyone can see. Get rid of that. Here's what he said. Broncos country. And by the way, it was a picture of him in the huddle, kind of motivating the dudes in the tunnel, so to speak. And then in between team leaders, Justin Simmons, Russell Wilson, quote, "Broncos country, I'm very grateful to be able to have finished off another season here in Denver. Unfortunately, we weren't able to accomplish our main goal. I'm still grateful for all my teammates and support staff that have been riding with me all season. I know all things happen for a reason, and I trust my God's plan over everything, including whatever is next for me. Just know I gave everything to this team and organization every time I stepped on the field. All love, 14.
My first instinct isn't to read into it as a goodbye, but it is a little cryptic, and you have to wonder about the timing, Chad. Like, why put certain verbiage together that way to make it seem like you're leading a breadcrumb of maybe I'm leaving, maybe I'm not. We have to see how it plays out. Like, if this was Jerry Jeudy doing this, for example, I can make an accurate take out of it, but Cortland Sutton isn't really known to be dramatic on social media. So when he speaks, it's important to listen.
No doubt. I think he's kind of communicating. This is me putting on my, jumping in my Freudian seat, so to speak here. But I think it is acknowledging for any NFL player, with very few exceptions, the kind of uncertainty that begins a new offseason on the heels of an unsuccessful regular season. So there's that unsure aspect of it. Hey, whatever may come, know that I love y'all and I gave it my all, etc. Plus, Zach, Cortland Sutton, even if he was never privy to specific conversations at Broncos HQ, he spent the better part of the last 2 off seasons being linked to one trade rumor after another. And then on top of that, he finally has a post ACL injury resurgence to his career. It's with a quarterback named Russell Wilson. This is a wide receiver who has found ways to shine despite being on a quarterback carousel centric team. I mean, that Pro Bowl year he had in 2019, 1,100 plus yards, half a dozen tutties, 3 different starting quarterbacks. And I think it's also him kind of being like expressing in one way or another, like, does he even want to be here if Russ isn't going to be here? He didn't say anything close to that. This is me interpreting, tonality, subtext, the entire situation over the last couple of years in particular. But I think there are a lot of questions relative to Cortland Sutton. And even though he is hands down the Broncos' most productive receiver coming out of the 23 season, I don't think anybody is untouchable this year in particular.
You might be onto something, because he went through quarterback hell, as every Broncos offensive player did, and he finally found some sort of rapport with one guy, that guy being Russell Wilson. Then what happened? That quarterback was benched and is probably going to be cut. I don't think Cortland Sutton, like any other player in the post-Peyton Manning era, wants to go through another playoff-less season, more uncertainty. So it could mean nothing, or it could mean something. We can look back on it maybe in 2 months and say, hey, if it happens, at least he didn't, he warned us in the past.
Get this, by the way. Thank you, Mr. Producer. Russell Wilson has 24 regular season games where he passed for over 300 yards in his career. Dak Prescott has 26 already, and that's in, Zach, 74 fewer career games, which just goes to show you that, like, that's not Russ's bag. Russ is not the Star Wars pocket guy, and it makes more and more sense, as much as I hate to admit it, as time marches on, that Sean Payton was very much drawn to the Broncos because of ownership. It's a quality team in the NFL, all-time annals, high class, the whole 9 yards. They've always done it right under Mr. B, and he really resonated with this new ownership group, and he liked the front office situation. But according to the most recent reporting, had his doubts about Russell Wilson and what might be left in the tank, but resolved to at least give it the old college try. It's starting to become even more understandable why he had those misgivings, even though some of us through wishful thinking may have been like, nah, Russ still has it. It was a weird year. I mean, we're talking about one of the most incompetent head coaches in NFL history in Nathaniel Hackett. A guy like Sean Payton can get it done. And I'm trying to remember who it was, Zach, that said this specifically, but I think was it the same Dick Vermeil article, but basically if Sean Payton can't resurrect Russ, can't be done.
I mean, I hate this expression, but there's multiple ways to skin a cat in the NFL if you're a quarterback, and it's all about W's in the end. Not passing yards or stats; it's about winning. And last I checked, Russell Wilson has a Super Bowl on his resume, and Dak Prescott doesn't. So it's people love the sexy, people love reading the price tag, so to speak, on some of these quarterbacks and the box scores, but we all know that Russell Wilson, I think, had a better career in the NFL than Dak Prescott so far.
Yeah, Jeffrey, Russ' Twitter post today looked like he wants to stay. So I'm checking out his Twitter right now. Most of it is him giving props to the players who received some accolades since the season ended, All-Pro, Pro Bowl, this and that. But his last tweet, Zach, came 6 hours ago, and it was celebrating a stellar play between he and Cortland Sutton against the Raiders. Looks like it was week 1. And he said, quote, "The double spin toe tap by Sutton in Buffalo and us beating KC were my favorite moments. 2023 was fun. 2024 about to be better." So I didn't really read anything that would imply or speak to his view of staying in Denver till that last thing, 2024 about to be better for him or for the Broncos.
I might be getting hangry, need some Little Caesars ASAP, but I can't stand another offseason or months of deciphering every single Russell Wilson tweet. The sooner that we have resolution chat on this matter, to me, the much better.
Well, what'd they say? 2 weeks. They're going to take 2 weeks, come back and get to things. And Sean Payton, Russ, you'll be the first to know what we decide. But it seems like whether it's justified or not, and we can argue that till the cows come home, the Broncos are probably moving off the Russ thing unless he tweaks his contract. And Zach, when you're already owed X number of guaranteed many millions of dollars, a team that kind of, in your opinion, if you're seeing it through Russ's eyes, kind of did you dirty this past season. Where's my and you see, it seems like I'm already halfway out the door anyway. What really is my incentive to tweak my contract, take less money, let move this date to that date, defer guarantees into the future, It's hard to see it happening, but the Broncos are, they've got a first round pick, but it's just outside the top 10. So unless they had a pretty good plan in place already, Zach, where the scouting department and Sean Payton kind of were sharing a brain on a given quarterback and had a plan in place that they felt relatively optimistic they could execute in terms of getting in position to land that quarterback, you might just go, you know what, we're better off trying it one more year. But the problem is, as his contract stands right now, one more year equals 2 more years.
I just can't see Russell Wilson's motive either in redoing his deal. If it's to endear himself to the fan base, it's never going to work. They've been crapping on him since day one, some of them, the Broncos fan base. And also, how do you come back as a mentor or a bridge or whatever after the team came to you, said, Russ, we'd like to do this, and you said no, and then, okay, we're going to take you out for Jarrett Stidham now, bye.
Yeah.
The brutality and the cold dog nature of the business, I think Russell Wilson woke up to in Denver. And if I was him, I wouldn't be sticking around for that much longer, Chad.
You know what? I'm with you. I'm feeling the stomach grumble, and it's a good reminder that it's that time to talk about one of our great partners tonight, which is Factor. Guys, you got to get started on your New Year's resolutions with the help of Factor so that you're ready for the new year. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. You get to skip the grocery stores, all the prep work, and the cooking fatigue, and instead get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door with over 35 meals to choose from per week, that is, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan, and veggie, and more. Plus, you get over 55 weekly add-ons. You'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your resolutions, and it really is convenient. It comes to you in kind of like a TV dinner type of format, only it's not frozen, it's fresh. Can't recommend it highly enough.
Yeah, Broncos country. Skip the stress of meal prepping over the holidays with Factor. Choose from more than 35 weekly flavor-packed, fresh, never frozen meals that support a healthy lifestyle and meet your meal preferences. This January, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door, ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. And this isn't a service just for now or just for tomorrow, just for next week. It is here for the new year, the entire year, 2024, and no isn't Factor. It's not just a way of life. It's 365 days a year, Chad.
That's right. So head to factormeals.com/huddle50 and you use our code huddle50 to get 50% off. That is code huddle50 at factormeals.com/huddle50 gets you that 50% off. All right, man, I'm just like starving Marvin over here right now, ready to eat something as soon as we hop off. Okay, Zach, I want to grab this. And by the way, appreciate each and every one of you being with us. William in the house. What are these rumors about Mason Rudolph? So I might be mostly to blame over this. It's not really a rumor about Mason Rudolph and the Broncos. It was the Bills' former GM, Doug Whaley. How do you say his name?
Waylon.
No. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. He did made an appearance on a Pittsburgh area radio show earlier this week. And the questions about Rudolph's future are obviously quite salient in that market because he's the starting quarterback currently. He went from Zach opening this season as the third string guy behind Kenny Pickett and Mitchell Trubisky to Mike Tomlin saying, hey, here's the keys to the offense. Started the last 3 games, won all of them, hasn't thrown a pick yet, and he's the guy. But now going to be a free agent when this season is over, so there are a lot of questions, and so they're talking about him. And the GM said that he basically fits ideally what Sean Payton is looking for as far as being that pocket guy. And so I'm like, you know what? It's slow. It's the off season, and to boot, Zach, it's the weekend. I'm going to write this up. But that's really the extent of it. Still, though, it doesn't really move us off our prerequisite of no more reclamation projects, no more Band-Aids.
And it doesn't answer, correctly the questions that we posed on Thursday's podcast. Is a veteran quarterback out there that would be cheaper than Jarrett Stidham for 2024, which is under $5 million, and also an upgrade on Jarrett Stidham on the field? I don't think Mason Rudolph would qualify for either of those. He is extremely mid, a career backup. And if you're going to roll with that while you break a new quarterback in, a rookie, and give him time on the bench, you already have the guy. He's already familiar with the playbook. He's already started 2 games. I don't see the point, Chad, of taking 2 steps backward to take 2 steps forward. Just go forward. Cut one of those steps out.
Plus, be in the same way, Zach, that you have to beware of the one-year wonders in the draft, specifically in the first round, and especially relative to quarterbacks. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky is actually one of those lessons that NFL teams hopefully have learned and take to heart. Beware the one-year wonder. Well, it's similarly true for veteran stopgaps. You can't call him a journeyman because he's been with the same team since he was drafted, but that stopgap kind of fail-safe dude that comes in down the stretch and kind of saves the day and suddenly finds a way to capture lightning in a bottle, and it translates to some short-term success. Matt Flynn echoes throughout football eternity on why you got to be careful about those guys. I think this is probably a quarterback that the Steelers make a push to keep in Pittsburgh and let
Yeah,
he and
sure.
Pickett kind of battle it out next summer. But I look, does he fit the Payton prototype of as far as he's got nice size, a 6'5", 235-pound dude. He's a pocket guy really only. And in that sense, Payton likes the guys who are going to be where he wants them to be. Ball's going to come out on time, all that stuff. But there is literally nothing next level at all about Mason Rudolph. And to boot, Zach, you have all that context of the situation, the collection of guys, and that weird chemistry that gets involved with football and playoffs and all that, especially down the stretch. That it's hard to rebottle that somewhere else with a completely different cast of characters, coaching staff, situation, when the quarterback doesn't have a history of being the difference maker, etc.
If Mason Rudolph is such a hidden gem, what's he doing? He's buried third string in Pittsburgh behind Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. I mean, I'm pretty sure Rudolph was a second or third round pick, a fairly high round pick, and he's never been spectacular on the field. His claim to fame in the NFL is getting the hell beat out of him by Myles Garrett in that helmet brawl. He's as unspectacular as backup quarterbacks come. You already have that guy in Jarrett Stidham. Just roll forward.
And yeah, it was third round, Oklahoma State. Hey, BK, thank you, brother. Appreciate the super chat. And yes, congrats to Dylan Von Arx on his first podcast, which was Saturday night, but still joining Ron White now as the permanent co-host on Orange and Blue View. So did a great job, broke the ice, popped his cherry, so to speak. But, we've had Dylan on the show back in the day when he first kind of popped on our radar, which was as a super chat superstar. He was in our community and he was vocal, and he was obviously knowledgeable and consistent in there every single night and very supportive. And then it started, Zach, with us going, yeah, hey, dude, you want to maybe help us moderate on YouTube? And he did that for a while, and then decided to give him an opportunity to write, and he's knocked that out of the park. He stayed consistent. He made the trip for the MHH meet and greet back in October. Once again, not his first time. Brought the old man too, by the way. It was cool to meet your dad. And so when the opportunity came, there was a spot needed filling on one of the shows. Made perfect sense to rope Dylan in on that. And yeah, congrats to you, big dog. You crushed it.
Yeah, I never had a question. Dylan's going to kill it. Be sure everyone to check out their show on Saturday nights, 6 o'clock Mountain, 8 o'clock Eastern. That's Dylan and Ron White.
We've got Phil jumping in. Good Lord, I'll take Ben DiNucci, Gucci DiNucci over Mason Rudolph. Yeah, it's worth mentioning too that this became a thing because the Broncos obviously are in the national news, Zach, relative to the Russ situation. Everybody knows that there's a solid chance that Sean Payton's going to be in the quarterback market this year. And you're in a local market in Pittsburgh that has questions of its own at quarterback. And so one of the first guys that has a credible opinion, you ask him about it. And that's what he said. He said, I like the fit, but let's not also jump too far over the shark, so to speak, in terms of it meaning anything relative to how the Broncos feel. Does Payton even like Mason? We have no reason to believe any of that.
I agree with the comment as well. I like DiNucci over Rudolph, and here's why. It's very simple. We already know what Mason Rudolph is. We don't already know what Ben DiNucci could be, and that might just be a backup, second string, third string, but we don't know. So I'd rather roll with the potential and the ceiling over the floor.
Yeah, Paxton Lynch is a good example of that as far as the 1 year wonder phenomenon. So good call on that. His junior year at Memphis, 28 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, about 3,800 passing yards. John Lopez jumping in with a very generous super chat. Thank you, brother. Really appreciate you. He says, good evening, Chad, Zach, and Scott. This always seems to elude discussion. Are we happy with the Broncos' run game? It seemed mediocre. Any running back standing out in the draft? Thoughts? Well, listen, no, it's funny you say that because it's funny you kind of angle your question the way that you did because Sean Payton, Zach, stayed committed for most of the season to the running game. Like I said, that first quarter, there were a lot of factors that led to the 1-5 start, but including, I think early on, too much of a reliance on this straight pass, drop back passing game. But then he's like, I'm trying to remember which game it was, Zach, in the second half, where where he was lamenting his losing patience and going away from the running game in the second half when they were trying to battle back. Anyway, moving on from that, he kind of overcorrected, but not too much, where it was like run game. The problem is, Zach, it did lead to some good things, but the problem was they weren't getting production on those first and second down situations, which are the key rundowns. And I think a big reason for it was initially a new offensive line and a new scheme kind of coming together, but I think they quickly coalesced. If you look at that unit across the board, for the most part, run blocking wise, the grades are very, very good, both individually and collectively. I honestly believe this was a big case of just not having the right running back fit. You need a more explosive back. And there's a good chance, Zach, that Javonte Williams can still be that guy, because this was his first year back, kind of rushed, so to speak, from a grievous multi-ligament knee injury. So while there is a chance that Pookie could still offer you that explosive option, I'm not banking on it. I'm not going to totally rely on it. And if I'm the Broncos, I'm finding me a 1A caliber, or 1A, 1B caliber running back out there, whether it's through the veteran free agent market or the draft.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to the draft dudes on specifics of who the Broncos should target in the draft. Though the type of running back has to be the game breaker. The mold they should be trying to replicate is what they saw in Detroit, which is David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, the lightning and the thunder. You have to have that in today's NFL. There were multiple factors, though, as to why the running game kind of fell off. I do think they rushed Javonte back a little too soon. He tired down very quickly. He wasn't 100%. The offensive line wasn't always getting pushed. And also, from their point of view, the opposing defense would play near the line of scrimmage, knowing Russell Wilson's limitations. They were pretty much daring the Broncos to beat them through Russ, knowing they could shut down the running game. So there were so many things that went into it. Having a better quarterback under center certainly will take pressure off the backfield.
That's an excellent, excellent point. And I'm glad you brought that up, because when the defense can anticipate what you're going to do on first and second down to like a accuracy rate of something like the 85 percentile, you could have freaking Barry Sanders back there, and it's not gonna be as great. Now, maybe Barry Sanders is an extreme, maybe it's a bit hyperbolic, but you get my point. When they know what you're doing on first and second down, especially, like, it kind of changed a little bit the last 2 or 3 games, but anytime the Broncos had Jaleel McLaughlin on the field, it was a specific telegraphed tell, ball's going to him on a handoff. And so you just load the box. You didn't have a quarterback that could make him pay for that ever, without completely bailing out on whatever the play is, escaping the pocket, and going full backyard football. You can't bank on that. You cannot pay your mortgage on a quarterback who makes all of his bones, 90% of his bones, Zach, off schedule.
And that's something that I think Sean Payton was pissed off about, and what led to the Russell Wilson benching. And I'm just spitballing here, speculating. Sean Payton wants a dominant running game like Detroit. That's why he kept comparing the Broncos to Detroit. And when you have a quarterback like Russell Wilson under center, and he admitted those limitations, not specifically, you just can't do it because defenses can tee off. Hopefully, if they have Jaden Daniels, crossing my finger, under center in 2024, the running game should take off.
Oh, baby. I mean, look no further than Houston at how the right quarterback pick can immediately change your fortunes. Okay, we're at 39 minutes. We're getting a little bit long. Sorry we were so late tonight. That was my fault. But any burning topics, questions, supers, get them in the chat. We're probably going to keep tonight a little bit shorter than usual. But Zach, what did you make of, and I'm not sure if you saw this, but I'll pull up the article, but did you see the the ugly Twitter brawl that Pat Surtain and Justin Simmons got into with James Marilat, and what did you make of that?
I've heard about it. I don't know the context.
Okay.
We'll react in real time tonight.
Let's go through it real quick. and then we'll grab, pardon me, not allowed here. Let's go through it real quick. Cliff Notes version, okay? Um, so James Marilat, he's, gosh, this frog in my throat. He's an editor at Denver Sports, which is 1043 The Fans digital sports blog. Formerly the Mile High Sports guy. He sold that, got out of that, and has worked for The Fan. But he's kind of been an anti PS2 dude. And he's definitely, Zach, what you might call a social media pugilist, right? Like he's experienced and loves getting in there and getting his knuckles bloody on Twitter. Um, and he's a little bit of a hot take guy, and that's where he kind of makes his bones. And I don't say this to criticize him. I've got nothing against him. I'm just telling you kind of his style. He tweeted this quote: "The PS2 outrage, of course, of being, I guess you could call it snubbed for the All Pro, omitted from the All Pro team. The PS2 outrage is funny. Dude made 0 plays this year. Don't give me the they don't throw in his direction nonsense. The Patriots did on the biggest play of the season, and he got beat. He wasn't an all pro this year, not even close." And then he went on another tweet that I'll kind of paraphrase, where he's like, "Yeah, I'm getting ready to go on vacation thanks to Devontae Parker." All right. Surtain punches back. All right. And he says, quote, to Marilat, "You've been hating ever since I got in the league for some reason. LOL. Go watch the tape. And I can speak for myself, not these clowns on this app, including you. Look at all my 3 years and measure that up. You're talking like you know something." All right. All right. Then, Marilat, he kind of punches back at that. And it didn't take long for Justin Simmons to succumb to the trigger. And this is very unlike Justin Simmons, Zach, but he jumps on, tweets, quote, "There are people on this app that think PS2 isn't a top 4 corner," meaning, if you're one of the top 4 corners, you're an all pro, obviously. "I'm not naming them or quote tweeting because they want the attention. Just know you're a clown and always will be. And at some point you will be addressed. Now just isn't the time. Pat is elite," close quote. And then last thing here, Zach, and then I'm serving it back to you. Marilat punches back and, with this comment I mentioned earlier: "Thanks to Devontae Parker, I'm on vacation this weekend. I'm going to go enjoy it. You guys should too," after Justin Simmons added him with a clown emoji. So Justin Simmons says, quote, "After vacation, don't forget to punch in your clock on Monday. Crazy how you're attacking generational talent when you have no background to stand for it. I never respond to anyone because it's not worth it. But you attack Pat. Shows your character. This is my last reply. Enjoy." Close quote. So if we weren't in the midst of the offseason and a weekend stretch of the offseason, not much to see here, but that's the full context. Your thoughts?
That's what I was going to say. It's like, that's how I know it's January 14th and the Broncos are out of the playoffs once again. We're devolving to this, but what I could say about Merliat is he's a social media contrarian, and he gets off on people taking the bait hook, line, and sinker. So Surtain responding and Simmons responding, that's what he wanted. And the only way to kill that fire is to not give it the oxygen, not respond to someone who is known for firing hot takes with the purpose solely to rile people up. That's who he is.
But you can tell the Broncos are a little sensitive over this PS2 thing. And, it wasn't just PS2's response that kind of roped Justin Simmons in. Simmons was obviously feeling this. And, but look, I hate to be, I'm not saying this, Zach, to pile on, but if you look at who made the All Pro team, it's understandable that he didn't make it this year. And you look especially at his body of work, it was a solid season. And I would say, yeah, it was a Pro Bowl caliber season. It wasn't a poor season, but it was far from that all pro body of work from 2022 that Surtain laid down. And he had 2 games in particular, Zach, that were just ugly and where he just didn't play well and got smoked. And highlights, the Miami game and that Patriots game in particular. And so to me, there's a reason why I haven't been raging against the machine over PS2 not making the all pro team. But hopefully what it does here, Zach, is it fuels him to get better and continue honing his craft. I do believe that he is one of the elite corners in the NFL. Let's just leave it at that. And the Broncos have, for now anyway, one of the most elite corners in the league.
The only player I was really raging over, if you can call it that, was Quinn Miners, because I feel like he was snubbed from the Pro Bowl and snubbed
Yes.
from All Pro. Surtain, you can definitely make the case that he didn't deserve it, though. You can definitely make the case that he should have made it, considering he was a Pro Bowler, Chad, and he did make the NFLPA All Pro team, whatever that's worth. So he's just not. I don't think he has the name recognition to get there every year solely on that alone yet.
It's true. Not allowed here, jumping in with a super chat. Thank you, my brother. Appreciate you. My top 3 free agent targets: Chris Jones, Danielle Hunter, Devin White, linebackers. D-line, rush linebacker, off-ball linebacker. What are your guys' thoughts? I mean, how wonderful would it be, Zach, to have Chris Jones in a Broncos uniform? He's literally uncontainable.
But how are we paying him to get him in the Broncos uniform?
Exactly.
Well, he takes Monopoly money, Chad.
Right. There's the voodoo, right? We'll see what the Broncos ultimately plan to do when they get back from their little vacation and start making their big decisions. When they get back, you can believe that Sean Payton and George Payton are going to be looking at different reports from Rich Hurtado and some of the staff about what move would create this cap space. Hey, we could approach this player about this and this, this cut over here, blah, blah. So they're going to have kind of a laundry list of options that, depending on the path they take, can get them to this resolution. This one's kind of like, pick your own story type thing. When they get back and have those meetings, I think some of these decisions are going to flow pretty quickly. But for now, I don't think Chris Jones is even possible. Hunter as well. Like, he's getting a little bit long in the tooth, but he maintains his productivity. And Devin White, we love this dude coming out.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we were at the combine the year he came out, and he's a stud, but I'm just not sure the Broncos are going to have the means until we see what manner of voodoo they're able to work relative to the salary cap.
That's what it boils down to me. Not allowed here. I like the way you're thinking. The Broncos definitely have to address edge rusher, defensive line, but these are all A-tier free agents, and the Broncos will be lucky if they can snag one B-tier free agent. George Payton himself even said, don't expect the Broncos to be in on the first wave like they were last season. All those guys will be way out of their reach. I mean, basically, if they can't re-sign Lloyd Cushenberry, you're not going to be able to afford Chris Jones. Simple as
Scott's of the opinion, for what it's worth, that Devin White was awful this year. Colby, the Triple C in the house, bro. So good to see you. Thank you for the stars, man. Really appreciate the support tonight. We could really use it. He says, does Scott, Devin White was awful this year. All right. So Zach, he started 13 games, finished with just 83 tackles, 49 solo, 2.5 sacks, a little bit of production there, but definitely below the standard of his previous kind of all-pro, Pro Bowl contributions. I mean, he was coming off of 3 consecutive triple-digit tackle seasons and came 9 short his rookie year. So he's basically coming off of 4 straight triple-digit tackle seasons, and he only had 83. You look at his Pro Football Focus grade, Scott's providing it for us here. And he had an overall grade of 46. His run defense was a 30.8. Now, just the context of that, without spending too much time, those are terrible, horrendous grades. I don't get too caught up on Pro Football Focus grading system, just because at times it seems arbitrary and you scratch your head. But over large sample size and throughout time, I think it does at least point generally in the right direction. So do you want to sign someone coming off a career low, or here's maybe another way of looking at it relative to Devin White, and thank you, Ronk. We love you, big dog. Maybe now's the time to try and strike on a player like Devin White, because his value might be a little bit diminished as a result of coming off a lackluster year. But that's still assuming, Zach, that you have the wiggle room to get a deal like that done.
I'll defer to Scott for sure. He watched him twice a year down in the NFC South. So if he says he's kind of washed, then I tend to take that to heart. But what Devin White does best, not necessarily defending the run, is he's so good against the pass. And he might have taken a step back, but throughout the course of his career, that's what he made his bones on. And that's what the Broncos should be targeting. And that was one point I wanted to make about Chris Jones and Danielle Hunter and all these players. Instead of throwing more money at someone else's leftovers or whatever, how about the Broncos go out and just draft these guys and develop them and have the next Chris Jones or have the next Danielle Hunter on a 4 or 5 year cost control deal? I think that's the way to go about it. But realistically, washed or not, they just can't afford an A-tier player of that caliber. Not this year.
Last thing on that subject, and thank you, Ronk, and we're going to dip on out of here. From Mr. Producer, context here on White. He was a healthy scratch a few times this year, and amid reports that he, quote, quit on the Bucs. So, yeah, you're looking at a little bit of a reclamation project, which might affect his value, but how invested do you want to get in a guy that has rumors saying he quit? So keep that
a little Randy Gregory-ish.
Yeah, we don't need that. Eric Weber, bro, so good to see you. Thank you, bro, for the support. He says, Happy New Year, MHH crew and Broncos country. Want to see what the front office has in store in the coming weeks and for the draft. Indeed, we're going to find out here pretty soon. Maybe as soon as toward the end of this week. I'm not positive on that, but yeah, dude, thank you. Really appreciate you. But with that, Zach, I think we've kind of reached the end unless there's anything left that you wanted to cover.
No, I mean, this is just Jay in response to what I said. You can only draft with the picks that you have, Zach. If you have a lack of picks, especially top 100, it's hard. I mean, obviously, Jay, I'm just saying if they were to bypass a quarterback at 12, let's say, if you target that edge rusher or interior lineman and you hit on that guy, you don't have to go out and overspend on a veteran when you can have that next star in your building in the pipeline being built up. I'm just saying that's the best case scenario and something the Broncos have whiffed on for the last 5 or 6 years.
Oh, man. What you really are hoping here is if Josie Jewell, if there's just not the money there to bring him back, you got to fall back on your initial read of Drew Sanders and really kind of lean into the progress he showed this last quarter of the season. Not to say that it was like eye-opening, but he did take steps forward. So there is that, Zach. But guys, we're out of time. Don't leave. Couple 2-3 messages for you first.
Great episode of the MHH podcast. As always, if you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter at the MHH pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every podcast, check out mhhmerch.com and get you some, baby. If you haven't, drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. You can find us on Instagram if you're there at mile_high_huddle. And an Apple Podcast, make sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
That it does. A mile-high salute to the great Super Chat superstars and supporters tonight, helping us keep the lights on, going up against a bona fide NFL wildcard game. Thanks to every one of you for being with us. And a special shout out to the Ronk, Phil McLaughlin, Anthony Cardoza, BK, John Lopez, Not Allowed Here, and Colby C. Collier, the Triple C. Love it, guys. We'll see what the Newswire has to present to us tomorrow. But Zach and I will be back then, 6 p.m. Mountain. We'll be on time tomorrow. That's my word to you. We'll be perfectly on time, right at 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern. Come hell or high water. Trust. Love you guys. Have a good Sunday night and enjoy Martin Luther King Jr. Day tomorrow.
Yes, sir. We'll see you all tomorrow night. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.